Greetings from Goblin Valley, Nissedal, Norway. Today I will be changing coils on this Yihi SX Mini G-Class because I installed enormous fused Clapton coil on this one in my first video, which I now deeply regret I did. So I shall be changing that back to a flat wire coil. This is not a tutorial on how to change coils in an RDA or atomizer or dripper. This is of course about my two favorite subjects, the airflow and the flat wire coil. I have been looking at the first video I made, and I will talk a bit about that because when I did the Clapton coil in this one, I had to use very low wattage because the battery just quits in the Yihi. When the battery when you need the power to power a big Clapton coil in this one, it's a very honest mod. Because if it can't do what you ask it to do, it just cuts the power instead of giving you a lame weight, and that's very good. But it also shows how power hungry the big Clapton coils are. So today I will be talking about power consumption and the efficiency of the flat wire coil opposite the Clapton coil, and we'll do a bit of math, and we'll do a bit of physics, and a lot of my personal opinions on the vaping experience. The problem is with this one is now set at 85 watts. Because to get the coil started in this one, it's this huge single Clapton coil. To get this going, you don't start at 85 watts. This mod goes for 2 seconds at 130 watts. This one with the same surface area flat wire coil is about starts at about 90 watts, and when the batteries are done, we are down at 75 watts continuously. But even with this one starting at 130 watts, now it's cold, you get a vapor like this. Same surface area on the coil, and the same resistance on both coils. This is now 0.48 ohm, this is 0.51 ohm. And the batteries in this are starting to get a bit weak. I will change them soon. So this is about 75-ish watts. I measured it before we started, and this was 130 watts. Of course, when the Clapton gets warm, it produces more and more vapor. But the RDA is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So even if you use temperature control on this one, you will start to get uneven draws or weak draws. The consistency will be problematic even with this one when you use very large coils, because the temperature resides in the metal. It's warming up now just from one draw, and this one is just as cold as the rest of the metal. So when you do stuff like this and just starts them at the same time, you will see the vapor looks very different from the two different coils. So let's start them. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. So here you have firecrackers and a column like this. Here you have a more immediate. It starts at the point when you push the button, and it goes out, blooms out like this. But that's not how it works when you vape, because the flat coil it starts to burn if I hold down the button for 5 or 6 seconds. And this one does not. That is because the Clapton is optimally perforated through the whole coil, while this gets very, very hot on the outside. So it requires airflow to be efficient. But if you take this one and just breathes on it, you'll see that the vapor production on these two are actually quite similar. Damn. So in flavor, it is very hard for me to say this one is better than this one. That is not my point at all. My point is that the Clapton coil gets hotter. It uses 30 to 40% more energy. And the vapor is hotter, and the whole mod gets hotter, but especially the housing of the RDA gets very, very hot on the Clapton coil. So you lose a lot of juice because it vaporizes your juice when you have, if you take 2 draws. The juice is still evaporating after you have taken your draws, because it gets so hot so quickly and stays hot for a long time. Now I can already touch this coil. I will not dare touch this coil. So well, let's do some math and I'll explain the numbers. Now I put up some numbers for you to look at. This is the physics and the math behind what I'm doing. I thought it deserved a brief explanation. As you can see, this is the Clapton coil, and this is the flat wire coil I made from a piece of 22 gauge cancel. Now, the fused Clapton has a resistance of 48 ohm, and the flat wire is of 0.51 ohms, so they're similar. The surface area inside on the cotton is 163 millimeters squared, and on the flat wire it is 224 millimeters squared. Now, the diameter of the Clapton is about 4 millimeters, and the diameter of the flat wire is about 5.5. But if you go for the argument that this one is filled with juice in some sort or manner, and I can go with that, and we can put up 200 millimeters squared. It doesn't matter as you'll see in the long run, because the weight of the Clapton is 1450 milligrams, because it consists of 3 meters of thread, over 2.5 meters of wrapping wire, and 40 centimeters of 26 gauge wire to make up this one coil. The flat wire weighs in at 210 milligrams and consists of 10 centimeters of 22 gauge cancel. So I like to use this formula when I started doing this, and that is milligrams per millimeter square. So by dividing the weight and the surface area, you get this number. For the Clapton, the ratio is 9:1. For the flat wire, the ratio between the metal and the surface area touching the cotton is 1:1. But if you take this number and say that, well, you should measure the outside of the Clapton, because basically it's steel mesh cotton in some sort or way, then okay, you end up with 7:1. And if you ask me, that it doesn't make any difference. The difference between these two coil designs is just enormous. Now this 7:1 or 9:1 or 1:1 weight to surface ratio, what does it mean in real life? Well, it means that the Clapton coil needs a preheat function of 130 watts just to get going within 2 seconds. The flat wire coil starts immediately, under half a second at 85 watts. Once these two coils gets going, to give me a comfortable vapor, they run at about 85 watts, both of them. But this one needs 130 watts for the first 2 seconds to get going, and even then it is slow. Much slower than this one. So that is what the ratio means for you. Now, it is obviously, if a typical vape is about 4 to 5 seconds, that the power consumption, if half of your vape is 130 watts, even though it's set at 85 watts, just to get the coil going, you have an enormous difference in power consumption. With this Yihi mod G-Class, if it cannot deliver the preheat of 130 watts, it just shuts down. If it can't deliver 85 watts, it shuts down. So after a very short while, you will have to turn this off to continue to vape on this Yihi. And when the battery can't deliver 85 watts on the ohm on the coil, it stops, and you have to turn this number down and down and down manually. Now a mech mod starts typically at 90, falls quickly down to 85, and it stays there with this coil, with the flat wire coil, for almost a day of continuous vaping, 85 to 80. Now, what would life be without a clumsy drawing of mine? Well, this is the death trap 30mm single coil RDA from a company called Death Wish. This is the clamps inside with a set of screws, like so. Now the airflow goes through this block on the side and up like this. There is a long slit on the side, quite a ways up, and the air from that slit goes like so. Now the drip tip is very special on this one. It's like this, and it's formed like a funnel, and that means and the actual opening is quite narrow, and the vapor you suck up will of course follow these edges and spread out the vapor in your mouth. So I show you this airflow pattern because of course this part you put cotton in to avoid turbulence. These parts you can't do anything about, but they're actually very small. So you want the airflow to the coil on the drawings it's of course placed here and the wind blowing on it, but of course the wind doesn't blow anywhere, you suck it out. So the air takes the shortest path out through the mouthpiece, through the drip tip from these sides. So you would like your coil to be very high up and a bit towards this block. So you want your coil to stay like this, and this flow of air follows the Quanda effect around your coil, and this hits the coil on the top and blends the dense vapor with as much air as you would like. And there you have it. So large coil, a bit up and straight under the opening in the drip tip, high up to get some cooling from the air from the side. Well, friends, foes, Clapton lovers and Clapton haters, they say a picture tells more than 1,000 words. I think pictures and words are two very different things. So that's my piece of philosophy for today. To the left you have the piece of string that went into making the flat wire coil on the left. To the right you have all the pieces of wire that went into making the Clapton coil to the right of the flat wire coil. So just look at this picture. I know what I prefer. The outer diameter of the Clapton coil is the same as the inside diameter of the flat wire coil. That is to compensate for the lack of metal mesh in the flat wire coil, and replace that metal mesh with just a lot of more cotton saturated with E-juice. I'll show you a close-up. So you see the Clapton wire actually fits inside the flat wire coil. So I finally did a money shot for all you coil fetishists out there, and it felt good. Now the coil looks like this. It's huge, just as big as the Clapton coil I had previously. The settings now, I had it on hard plus. The settings now is I put this mod on soft, so it's green and green blue and very friendly. The coil came in at 0.58 ohms. I was hoping for 0.51, but that didn't happen. It's 75 watts. It draws continuously 6.6 volts, which means that when each battery reaches 3.3 volts, it will stop working, and it's time for me to recharge the batteries at the point where I should recharge my batteries because they're totally drained at 3.3. I can lower the wattage down to 60 for a while and go down to 2.9 volts per battery. It's risky, but in an emergency, when you really need to vape and don't have the spares, you can go further down and still have a decent vape from this. So soft setting 75 watts from this Yihi SX Mini G-Class and 30mm death trap from Death Wish. Yes, it's cold, so this is a cold vape. No ramp up, no preheating, soft setting. Yeah, let's see how it goes. You see, no ramp up time, no preheating settings. This is 75 watts from begin to finish when you vape, and the flavor is so good. It's so mild with tiny little droplets on the lips because the coil is centered. And the airflow is properly, the coil is properly situated straight above the vent holes, and the airflow from the outside is adjusted perfectly. If we take some hits in series, we can see what it really can do if you need this big dense cloud. Oh man, this is good. Oh, this is so great. And because this is also a fantastic mod, you can get this hit straight from cold until the battery quits, and the mod says the battery is empty, recharge, and the consistency is also superb. Yeah, I will call this a success.